All right, and welcome back to Logan Simmons Photography. Great to have you here, and today I want to talk about a new exciting announcement from Adobe. Just about a week ago, they announced a new version of Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Lightroom, and Adobe Camera Raw. And today I specifically want to focus on Adobe Camera Raw, the improvements made there. It's actually, especially with Lightroom, there's a lot of similarities between these updates, between the different programs. So let me take a look at it, specifically the local hue adjustment, which allows you to adjust color in a very specific part of the image as opposed to doing the entire image there at once. Lots of new capabilities, so I want to show that to you. But before we do that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you know when there's a new video. And after you watch the video, if you do like the video, make sure you hit the like button. Help us out a lot. I do appreciate it. But let me go ahead and bring you into my computer screen here, and we're in the new version of Adobe Camera Raw, in this case 12.3, but it is definitely not a minor update. If you've used Adobe Camera Raw before, you're going to notice a completely new interface. Now, this might look pretty normal right here. You have your basic exposure adjustments, but you notice as I scroll down here, and this is a lot like Adobe Lightroom is, where all the different adjustments are actually these little pop-out menus. So I can go to, I have, for example, some things already open. In fact, one thing, it will actually remember what menus you had open, and will keep those that way the next time you open up the plugin. But yeah, it keeps those there. You may remember it used to be up along here. There were some buttons you would press and access it. So pretty big change. Again, it's more in line with Lightroom, but if you're like me and use Adobe Camera Raw a lot, the adjustment can be a little jarring just to start out with there. So just one thing to note. Also, these buttons right here, this is the edit little button right there, which you want to hit to access that. But these buttons over here, you have your crop, your healing, your brush, gradient, the radial filters now right there. Those used to be all along the top screen right here. Now those have moved over there. So not too much of a change, but something to be aware of. You may notice as well, I've got the image kind of expanded into the biggest way it can. If I want to here, I can go ahead and open up. If I was working on multiple images, I would have those here. But I decided to collapse that. You can also move it down here. There's another option to move it below the image as well. And you do have these before and after features, which were in the previous versions, but they've kind of given you some more options here. You just click on these, toggle the current settings default. Whoops, that's not what I want. There we go, before and after. So you have your before and after like that. You can have it split in the middle. You can have it like that, or you can have it up and down. I'm going to turn that off because I'm not a big fan of the before and after personally. But we're going to get into local hue here in a second, but I just want to step you through kind of how the interface works if this is new to you. So I think the first thing I'm going to do, over here, I'm not too keen on this part over here. I like more of the image there in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my crop tool, and this is all new as well. So for example, you may remember before, if you wanted to straighten an image, you had to actually draw a little bar across here and hope you got it right. But this is real-time live. I don't think this image needs too much straightening, but that is something to be aware of. It's a nice improvement, I think. But again, I'm going to go ahead and just maybe got to be careful with those rocks. I don't want to mess up the composition, but I think I'm going to go about right there, and I'll click away. And my zoom controls over here, so go back to fit in view. And I do have my healing brush here. Again, brush, gradient, radial filters all right here. Let's just start with the whole image as a whole and see what we can do here. I did already do some adjustments. It was slightly overexposed, and I do think we're going to lose the detail there and a couple of those highlights, but that's not the end of the world. So I'm going to go ahead and just start maybe reducing about right there. Maybe bring out some shadow detail, clarity. Again, very snappy interface. One thing I did complain about with Lightroom, in fact, if you wanted to see my comparison between Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw, at least the previous versions, click up there on YouTube, you can watch that. One thing I did notice about Lightroom in the past is that it is kind of sluggish, and I understand that's improved a little bit, but definitely by adding this Lightroom-like interface, the Adobe Camera Raw is still very snappy. In fact, it may be even snappier than it was before, so I'm pretty pleased about that. Let me just think a couple other things we might be able to do here. I'm thinking maybe a little bit more vibrance there. I don't want to do saturation. That's going to make it kind of unrealistic, so I don't want to do that. Maybe a little bit more of warm the image up there a little bit. And let's just kind of scroll down here through the different modules so you can see. I've got a curve option, which I don't typically use in this case, but one thing that's new, you see along here as I go along the curve, it's actually telling me, okay, so now you're editing the highlights, lights, darks, and kind of gives you a visual representation of kind of where those are along that graph by showing you that. And of course, I can go back here and do reds, and now actually in this case, it looks like it doesn't have the same adjustment as the entire image, but you know, hey, that's something there. I'm not going to bother with curves. Sharpening, I don't see too much improvement there with that, but it was, you know, it was decent, so I'm not too sad about that. Noise reduction's right there, not too bad. Now color mixer, again, this is our hue. Now this is global hue. We're not talking about local hue just yet. We're going to get there in a second, but I think I'm going to go ahead and maybe make those reds a little bit more, the yellows. Whoops, what am I doing? I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go over to hue, and then I'm going to say greens, make those a little bit yellow. How about we do that? My mind is thinking one thing and saying something else, so there we go. And then I think, make those oranges a little bit more oranges, and I might try and bring out some of this detail down here, which in this case I want to bring out the color saturation. So let's go ahead and see if we can't saturate up those reds, those oranges, if at all possible here. Just trying to think what we can do. It's going to muddy it up, but whatever. Let's go keep trying this. I may try and go back in there at a later time. There we go. Maybe we can use that local hue down there and see if that fixes things. Split toning, obviously, that's going to be for black and white, which I don't think we're going to do on this image. One thing I will mention, the Remove Chromatic Aberration tab, it does seem to work a little bit better than in past versions. Now, this image doesn't need too much of it, but it seems like that tab, little button to hit there, works better, and you don't have to go into the manual adjustment as often here at this new version, which is definitely appreciated. And then, you know what? Here we go, effects. And again, these are just replicating what was up here. So this is actually a post-crop vignette is what I've noticed here. And I think we'll go in here, maybe do that. And I've got, let's see if I can push that midpoint out there just a little bit there. There we go. Okay, so I'm noticing a couple things I do want to change here. So I'm noticing up here it's a little bit too green, and even though we did go in here and make some of these greens a little bit more yellow, it looks like the effect wasn't quite as effective back here. And I think I may try and go in here as well, maybe brighten and saturate those oranges up just a little bit there. So let's go ahead and grab a brush, I think. And I think for now, I'm just going to go ahead and say, I don't know, leave it at highlights. I just want to kind of draw a brush. Let's see about feather, maybe feather that out a little bit more. And I'm going to go ahead and brush in here like so. And of course I'm sure I could turn on a mask if I wanted to, but let's see, there we go, that's pretty good. And I think then I'm gonna go down to my hue adjustment. This is kind of the big new feature for me. It doesn't look that much. And use fine adjustment, I'm not gonna bother with that. This seems to work pretty well. Remember I said I wanted to make those greens a little bit more yellow, so I'm gonna go ahead and start dragging this over here. So you can see the effect is pretty immediate and it is quite dramatic. So I definitely like that a lot. So let's see here. Let's see how far I would like to go there. I think that's pretty good there. So maybe increase saturation ever so slightly. Just give me a little bit more yellow there. There we go. Okay. And I think I'm going to try and do a little bit of editing down here as well in the foreground. So I'm going to go ahead and hit a new brush with that plus button. That's kind of a new way to do it. And I'm not going to do so much highlights. Maybe we'll do a little bit of clarity. But again, I want to focus on that color more than anything. So I'm going to go down here and say, let's kind of grab this here or so. Let's see. Oh gosh, now it's doing all sorts of things. Let me reset that hue. I guess it carried that over. And it's carried the saturation as well. And let's see if I can't make this. Obviously, if we go too far, now we're making it red. I'm just trying to see if I can't make this a little bit nicer. Let me actually reset it back to 0. And just kind of start dragging it that way. And it's a subtle effect as you do it there. Let me try and see if this fine adjustment makes any difference here. Might make it a little bit more radical. Come on, computer. Yeah, it's actually very, very subtle. It's barely moving the thing there. So maybe that's too fine. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and say leave it at that there or so. And I think we're doing some pretty good things. Let's go ahead and finish up the image and we'll wrap it up here. I think I'm going to go back to my hue a little bit and for the entire image. And I kind of want to make those blues maybe a little bit more purple. I'm just noticing one thing right there. Maybe we'll make those aquas And I'm just trying to play around and see if I can make them a little bit less distracting. In fact, maybe I'll desaturate my blues and aquas ever so slightly there. There we go. I'm just trying to think if I can go ahead and try and make this a little bit warmer. And I want to, I really want to make this image pop. That's the thing there. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. So that's a pretty decent image. Maybe I'll lighten up those greens ever so slightly, just right there. There we go. Now we do have a little bit of clipping up here we can see on the histogram, but it's not too bad. So, okay, let me go ahead and show you how we can save the image out. Actually, there's a new option right up here, and I'm going to call it this after. We'll go ahead and do that. And hit save, and now it's going to be saved over in my folder there, accessible in Adobe Bridge or the file browser, what have you. But okay, let's take a look at this image and see what this local hue thing actually did. Back here, we did go ahead and make those greens a little bit more yellow, and we did try and do the same thing over here to kind of bring out those oranges and reds. Now, this is a very subtle effect, and there are some additional improvements in Adobe Camera Raw, like some presets, depending on what ISO you have and so forth. I'm not really going to bother with those. The local hue to me was the biggest improvement. And I really do think it makes a pretty big difference in this, in this image. And I'm sure in other images it could make a difference even more. So I like it. See what you think. Again, if you are a subscriber of Adobe Creative Cloud, hit that update button. Just be prepared. The interface is going to be completely different. But I think over time you'll get used to it. I've been working with it the past week or so, and I actually do like the way that it's configured because it was the same way for so long before. So anyway, that's my verdict. Go ahead and give it a try. Local hue is very exciting. And again, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Help us out a lot. If you did like that video, hit that like button and let me know down in the comments what you think about these particular adjustments. And appreciate you watching. You have a great one. Bye-bye.